Hello there, my name is Will and welcome along to another What's That Groove, where today I'm going to be teaching you how to play the drum beat from the song 505 by the Arctic Monkeys. This is a great drum beat to learn because it actually uses the same pattern throughout the entire song. However, there are different sorts of challenges that come with this. You're going to be improving your kick drum speed as well as your ability to keep count of where you are in the bar when you're playing the same pattern over and over again. And of course, there's the challenge of playing this different pattern in different places on the drum kit as well. Let's get into this one and break it all down. So we're going to start at the very fundamentals of this one, just so we have a good understanding of how this drum beat is put together. Starting off with the counting. The whole thing is counted and felt in eighth notes. Those are the notes that you count 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And those notes are all going to be played with our right hand. Now, throughout this song, you're actually going to move the right hand onto different sounds of your drum kit. But to begin with, we're going to learn this groove in a standard sort of rock drum beat way between the hi-hat and the snare. So eighth notes with the right hand on the hi-hat, the left hand is playing the snare drum, and they're landing on beats 2 and 4. To begin with, we're going to start with 4 bass drums, and these are going to land on beats 1, the and of 1, 3, and the and of 3, giving you this kind of classic rock drum beat sound. Now that might feel quite straightforward to begin with, but I think it's important to have a good idea of where the bar begins and ends, and that starts at step 1. Once you feel comfortable with this, we can start to add in more bass drums. For our next step, we're going to add in one more bass drum, and this is going to land on the and of 2. This is the hi-hat that comes straight after the snare drum. Now, if you haven't played this sort of drum beat before, but you have been playing perhaps other classic rock drum beats, this might, even though it appears easy, actually feel quite difficult to do, because you probably have built up a bit of a muscle memory in your brain, which means that you'll get so used to hitting a hi-hat after the snare. So what I suggest to do is just play up to the and of 2. Once you're comfortable with that, you can just carry on for the rest of the bar, which now means you're going to have 3 bass drums in a row, because you're going to have bass, bass, snare, bass, 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 snare, hi-hat on its own. As we then begin to speed this drum beat up, we're getting closer to that kind of signature sound that we hear in the song 505, and I think this is a really important step to play over and over again. At this stage, you can hopefully kind of hear that natural reset of where the bar is. We have that dun dun ga dun 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 ga dun dun ga dun 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 ga. It's quite easy to identify where the bar begins and ends. In the next step, when we add another bass drum, this gets more blurred. So I think it's really important that you kind of master this groove, because it makes it a lot easier when you're then looping the same pattern over and over again, as you start to naturally feel and naturally teach your brain where the beginning and the end of the bar is. So the only hi-hat that we have that doesn't currently have a snare or a bass drum being played in it is the and of 4, the very last hit of the bar. So don't want to leave it out, we're going to put a bass drum on that one as well, and that's going to give us a continuous pattern of bass, bass, snare, bass, 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 snare, bass, 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 snare, bass, 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 snare, bass, 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 snare, which is almost just as hard to say as it is to play. So to begin with, we're going to play this one really quite slowly. Now, as you learn to play this pattern, what I would suggest to do is to start practicing counting when you're playing it slowly. Every time that you're getting to the beginning of the bar, so every time you're landing on the 1 at the beginning of your pattern, say the number of the bar out loud. Like actually shout it over the drum beat. 1, 2, This can actually be a bigger challenge than you think it would have been. It feels like it should be easy. We're just counting, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. We're doing it for our whole life. But because you're also keeping track of the eighth notes in your head as well, sometimes it can actually feel a little bit of a brain overload. Now the reason this is difficult is because you now have these two chunks of 3 and your brain thinks, great, 3 in a row. I'll just think 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. It groups them together. But because the bar actually ends midway through that second group of 3, you're actually creating what's known as going over the bar line. And that's why you might feel that when you get to the end of the bar and the beginning of the next one, you're thinking, I know it's the second one, can I say it out loud and also think about this bass drum pattern at the same time? Don't worry, it does become a lot easier the more you do it. You'll also find, actually, by just playing this drum beat over and over again, that you might start to inherently feel what 1, 2, 4, even 8 bars feels like without counting. This is just a technique that helps some people to keep count of where they are. Another thing you can also do is to hit the crash in that position as well. So at the top of the bar, hit the crash to mark where you are in the groove. Whichever technique works for you, whether it's the crash, counting, or just inherently feeling it, I'd still practice it as slowly as possible to help develop that bass drum technique and get used to playing so many bass drums over and over again. Once you have it down though, you can then start to speed things up and we can start to move the hands into different positions on the drum kit. So the important thing to remember when you get to this stage is that no matter what orchestration, that means what position we put the hands on the different sounds of the kit, the pattern that you've learnt so far is staying the same. We're still playing in eighth notes, the left hand is still landing on beats 2 and 4, and we're still playing the same amount of bass drums. It's just that by moving our hands onto different positions of the kit, it can create a very different feel on how the beat is played, which is kind of the beauty of the idea and of the whole song. There are 5 different positions of where you play this drum beat. The first position is with your right hand either on the hoop of the snare drum or perhaps the hoop of the floor tom. That is now your new hi-hat. The left hand that will be playing the snare drum is now going to play the side of the snare drum, the hoop, and the tambourine. If you haven't got a tambourine, you can hit the hi-hat instead. So on 2, it lands on the hoop, but on 4, it lands on the tambourine. After 16 bars of that, your left hand is now going to move to the snare drum. So we're going to sack off this tambourine hoop business and just go back to what it normally does, as you've been learning throughout this whole lesson, snare on 2 and 4. That also happens for another 16 bars, and at this stage your right hand is now going to move to position number 3, which is the hi-hat. And good news is that you've already learnt to play this drum beat so far by watching this lesson. So step number 3 is El Clasico, hi-hat, snare, bass drum, not Spanish, not sure why I said El Clasico. Now at this point in the song, it actually moves back to that very first position of when you're playing on the side of the hoop and the tambourine for another 16 bars. Or does it? No, it doesn't. You stop on the 15th bar and leave 1 bar break for Alex to give it the biggin when you then move into position number 4, where your right hand is going to move from the hi-hat to the ride cymbal and things are going to go up a notch. This one is actually double the length, so you're going to play this for 32 bars. So you're going to go round twice round to all the other stages that you've been playing so far, before you then move to the crash for the final stage. Take it home with your right hand for 16 bars on the crash cymbal, nice and loud, give it a big one, let's go. Hopefully that gives you all the tools that you need to be able to play this song. However, if you find you're still sometimes struggling to keep up or you're losing track of where you are in the song, head over to the next stage where I'll give you a couple of extra tips to help you. Okay, so I think the biggest challenge of playing this song is actually that consistent bass drum pattern that you're just playing over and over again and having the stamina in your legs to do it if you haven't done it before, and also the consistency of keeping the same sound over and over again. Now, this is just a case of really playing it over and over again, but also kind of working and making micro adjustments to your technique as you do so. You don't want to be tense in your legs. Think about when you're trying to play fast single strokes. Everybody always recommends that we use the wrist and we use the bounce of the stick. The same applies to your foot. If you're really tense in your leg and you're pushing up and down, it's just going to wear you out way too quickly. So you want to try and use the flexibility of your ankle as you play this song and try to relax and use the beater to kind of the bounce of the beats to help you go through it. One exercise that I find works really well is to actually go back to the drum beat we played in stage 2 and play that drum beat for 4 bars. Play that through for 4 bars and then you respond with 4 bars of all the bass drums all in. This sort of long form call and response exercise I think is a brilliant one for developing the technique you need of control with the momentum of the bass drum pedal. And by moving from pretty intense groove to an even more intense groove, we're then starting to develop the strength in our technique that we need to be able to play a song like 505. It's also a really good one for improving your counting because you're actually practicing 4-bar chunks as well. And that's going to develop that kind of inherent counting that I was talking about earlier on the lesson. Take your time with this one. Practice it slowly if you can, because it does take time to develop that bass drum technique to be able to last for the entire song. And once you have it down, it is such a fun song to play on the drums, and I hope from watching this video, you've got a better idea of how to play the drum part in 505 by the Arctic Monkeys. If you did get something from this video, please go ahead and press the like button, and why not subscribe to the channel whilst you're here as well to see more videos just like this one. Let me know in the comments how you're finding the groove, what bits you found hard, what's the most challenging thing about playing this song. I want to know how you're getting along. And until next time, my name is Will, and I'll see you again soon.